The events in this program are inspired by a true story. Names, dates, and events have been changed. Viewer discretion is advised. On this episode of Bizarre Murders, Jorge and Miguel are famous wrestlers who also happen to be twin brothers and little people. These two larger-than-life personalities give new meaning to the expression sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But when one night goes too far, Jorge and Miguel face the ultimate fight of their lives.
Abita! Necesito Abita!
Jorge and Miguel have been inseparable since birth. Unusually energetic, they grow up wrestling each other in their tiny, rundown home. Their father is not part of the equation, and their single mother has a tough time making ends meet. Without a television, they escape reality by listening to their older brother Guillermo's tales of the Mexican wrestling world. Guillermo is a pro wrestler who encourages his little brothers to join in on the fun. When they're teenagers, Guillermo sets the twins up with their first gig. They are billed as Los Gemelos Locos, the Crazy Twins. Jorge and Miguel are brash and wild, and at 4 foot 8 inches tall, ×2, they put on quite the show. In 1992, they adopt their adult wrestling identities, Hombre Salvaje and Cobra Voladora. And it doesn't take the tiny twins long to rise to the top of the Mexican wrestling scene.
Jorge and Miguel are rock stars in the Mexican wrestling world. But in all my years in the FBI, I've seen what can happen when fame puts you in a full Nelson. You can easily end up with 3 lifelong opponents: sex, drugs, and booze.
Over the next several years, the twins divorce their wives and deal with a different kind of wrestling. This time, the opponent is their growing alcohol and drug addictions.
Fiesta time, mi hermano! Yeah! Dude, that was a good fight!
After a big televised match against El Castigador, the twins are ready to celebrate. And for these boys, go big or go home isn't just a saying. It's a way of life.
In the short time that Fernando the bartender has been slinging drinks at El Cutre Hotel, he's seen his fair share of louts. But these two are especial.
Amigos, you think you can keep it down a bit? Huh?
But when he asks them to tone it down, it falls on deaf ears.
Wrestlers. We kept the belt, man. Yeah, 2 years running. Tag team, come on. Come on. All right, come on, fill this up. Here we go. Oh, hi. Hey. Good. How are you?
Do you ever take your mask off?
No. We leave these on all the time.
Sure, there's a certain thrill meeting strangers in a dark, dingy bar. But in my experience, it doesn't always have a happy ending. There was this case where a guy was gagged and bound to his bed with his junk duct taped so tight to his body that when the medics finally got it off, he wasn't ever able to, well, do it again. Stranger danger is what we like to say in the FBI.
The ladies make it known that they are prostitutes and that El Cutre Hotel is their office and place of business. And for a handful of pesos, will rock Jorge and Miguel's worlds. The twins and their newfound friends decide to take their cocktails up to the room for a nightcap, or guro de dormir, as they say in Mexico. But it doesn't take long before the party turns into a coke-fueled bender.
Just because Jorge and Miguel aren't able to actually receive the services that were agreed upon doesn't mean that these pros aren't getting paid, because that's how it works in this world.
Hola.
The morning after, a cleaning woman from the hotel is doing her rounds and arrives at Jorge and Miguel's room. It's well after their checkout time. She tries to wake the twin wrestlers, but when they don't respond, she becomes concerned.
Abita! Necesita Abita!
For such small guys, Jorge and Miguel ought to watch that voracious appetite of theirs. Everybody's got to pay the piper at some point.
Jorge and Miguel are twin wrestlers known as Hombre Salvaje and Cobra Voladora. They're also little people who defied their hard knock upbringing and rose to the top of the Mexican wrestling world. But fame has its dark side, and they're on a downward spiral that almost always ends badly.
La Cobra Voladora.
¿Quién?
The Flying Cobra.
I don't know who that is.
From the Crazy Twins. Los Gemelos Locos.
Once the police arrive on the scene, both Jorge and Miguel are officially declared deceased. The question the authorities immediately ask, was there foul play involved? But with no signs of forced entry and no signs of assault on the bodies, they can't ascertain the twin wrestlers' cause of death.
It's empty.
When police search the room, they discover the wrestlers have been robbed. The twins are celebrities in the Mexican wrestling world, and their hardcore partying is well known. Could they have been the target of a robbery gone wrong?
Can you fill us in on what happened?
I was just coming in to clean the room like I normally do, and I knocked on the door.
While they wait for the results from the autopsies on Jorge and Miguel, detectives question the cleaning woman who discovered Jorge and Miguel's dead bodies.
I just found these guys and they were dead.
I'm not surprised that they're grilling the cleaner. I mean, I do the same, because you wouldn't believe how many times that the person who finds the dead body is really the person who put it there.
But Guadalupe the maid has a solid alibi for the previous night. She was at the quinceañera of her 16-year-old niece. The police then turn their attention to the hotel staff working the night before. They're especially interested in a woman who was working at the front desk, Yolanda.
So who called you into the scene?
That was one of the housekeepers that I have on staff.
Yolanda tells the police that she remembers the men. Whoa, big surprise. Who wouldn't remember two guys with luchador masks in a bar? I mean, really.
She insists that she made no contact whatsoever with Jorge and Miguel. But she says that the bartender Fernando complained to her after his shift about these two obnoxious hombres pequeños who he'd like to smack around real bueno.
So, Fernando, you know why you're here.
The detectives move their focus to the bartender who served Jorge and Miguel the night before. They want to hear about their interaction and what it was about the brothers that rubbed him the wrong way.
Could you give them anything else besides alcohol?
No, nothing.
But when asked if he served anything other than alcohol to the little people, Fernando flies off the handle and gets very defensive.
Claim something for me I didn't do, okay? I didn't do anything. Nothing.
So here you've got this hot-headed hombre who was not only super pissed off with the little guys, but had access to what they were drinking all night, and now they're both dead with no visible signs of assault. And what the hell's Fernando thinking acting like this with the cops? Now they're gonna make him their suspect numero uno.
The twin wrestlers' autopsy results come in, and that's when the case goes from weird to bizarre. Los hombres pequeños have died from an overdose of tetrahydrozoline, HCI, more commonly known as eye drops. And the huge levels in their bodies can only mean one thing: they were poisoned.
The effects of tetrahydrozoline HCI when mixed with alcohol causes drowsiness, nausea, and amnesia. Kind of like what you'd find in a Rohypnol case, AKA the date rape drug. Using tetrahydrozoline is a cheaper way of knocking someone out, but definitely not your typical murder weapon.
Toxicology reports confirm that for men of their size, death would only take 1 hour from when Jorge and Miguel consumed their drinks laced with the poison to when they died.
Turns out that everyone's favorite asshat bartender, Fernando, is no longer a suspect, because he left the building soon after the foursome went upstairs, and he wasn't at the crime scene within the timeline that the men were murdered. Too bad. I was starting to like him for this one, but that's the way investigation goes.
When detectives review past case files, they uncover several with a similar MO. Men who were drugged and robbed using tetrahydrozoline found in eye drops mixed with alcohol. But in these cases, there were never any fatalities. Detectives review the security footage from the hotel and isolate 2 mystery women seated with Jorge and Miguel. As far as the detectives know, they are the last people to have seen the twin wrestlers alive, which now makes them the prime suspects in the murder.
Okay, they're leaving. Wait, let's see if we can get her. There.
Their focus then turns to the women.
That's the first suspect.
Video security footage is one of the greatest things that ever happened to law enforcement. It's almost cheating. Solving a murder is still a major grind, but man, does it help when video is part of the evidence.
Second lady.
But without IDs for the 2 mystery women, detectives have no way of tracking them down. They release their sketches to other law enforcement agencies and the local media in hopes of turning up a lead.
Sure, the media can at times be a pain in the ass and actually hinder an investigation. But when you need to track a suspect down fast, the widest reach is your best bet, and the media is your best friend. It's all hands on deck to find the 2 mysterious ladies of the night who took twin wrestlers Jorge and Miguel to their hotel room for a little R&R the night they were poisoned to death.
Jorge and Miguel are famous twin Mexican wrestlers, but they like to party a little too hard and never woke up from a wild night with 2 prostitutes. Autopsy reports showed they died from a lethal dose of tetrahydrozoline, also known as eye drops, mixed in alcohol. A massive search is now underway for the 2 women who were last seen with the twins the night they died.
In other news, the twin wrestling brothers known as Los Gemelos Locos were found dead today in their hotel room on the east side of downtown.
Mierda, what the hell did you do to them? ¿Qué hiciste? I did what we always do.
Persons of interest. Anyone with information is asked to contact local police.
Didn't you see that they were little people? How much did you put in there? Why didn't you tell me? Now the police is gonna come looking for us.
It doesn't take long for the partners in crime to start unraveling. Angela and Rosa decide to separate while they can, hoping to lessen the chances of getting caught. With only scant physical evidence and the police sketches to go on, the cops are at a loss for how to track down their prime suspects. But then Angela makes a major mistake that leads to her capture.
Free tip: when you drug your marks with the intent of robbing them, it's not a great move to later use one of their cell phones. Why not just buy yourself your own burner with the money you just stole, right?
Angela is immediately traced, ID'd, and brought into custody.
Can you tell us what happened?
I didn't mean for anything to happen. We just met the men and we wanted to party.
Have you guys robbed people before?
The police grill her, trying to connect her to last year's string of arrests.
Have you done this before?
I didn't want to hurt those men. They were nice men.
Angela admits that she isn't a prostitute. Never has been. She makes her living drugging men with eye drops, and once unconscious, she robs them. She's been at it for years. The dynamic duo are actually part of an all-girl gang in Mexico called Las Damas that specializes in posing as pros, baiting men to their hotel rooms, drugging them, and robbing them blind.
Can you tell me who this person is?
This is Rosa. If anything happened to those men, it wasn't me. It was Rosa.
Not only does Angela tell the police where to find Rosa, but she claims that Rosa is actually the brains behind the whole operation and that she had nothing to do with it. She didn't poison them. Kingpin Rosa did.
She has done this before. I know this.
I can't tell you the amount of times we got someone to flip while they're in custody at the FBI. A little bit of mind games with some carefully placed pressure, more often than not gets the person talking. Friends until the end, right? Not really. The police have got to get to Rosa before she flies the coop, or possibly moves on to her next John.
Celebrity twin wrestlers Jorge and Miguel partied with the wrong women one fateful night. Turns out Angela and Rosa are part of a gang of women that pose as prostitutes, then drug and rob unsuspecting men. The police have Angela in custody and an APB out for her partner Rosa.
Where can we find her?
In an old apartment on the east side.
The detectives break Angela, and she reveals where Rosa can be found. Police track down Rosa holed up in a Fleabag motel on the outskirts of town. She's promptly arrested and brought in for questioning.
I poisoned somebody? No. That did not happen.
She said that you two were accomplices and you were the mastermind behind it.
Angela, she's the one. If those people were poisoned, maybe she did that? I didn't know nothing about that.
Shocking, I know. But Rosa doesn't agree with Angela's assessment that she's the mastermind. Not surprisingly, she claims that Angela's the real leader and that she was just doing what she was told.
She's the one who has been planning these things all along, okay?
Despite both women accusing the other of the crime, they worked as a team, carrying out the poisoning and the robbery together.
Salud, amigo.
The thing is, Mexican eye drops are a lot more potent than American ones. Go figure. I guess they have a more relaxed FDA-type situation. Now, a dosage of around 10 milliliters is enough to knock out an average-sized guy, but the same amount applied to, let's say, a 4'8" individual would be fatal. When Angela and Rosa drugged the little wrestlers, they weren't planning on killing them, just knocking them out.
Even though they didn't intend to kill Jorge and Miguel, Angela and Rosa are arrested for murder.
And if you knew how much to give them, we wouldn't be here right now.
The duo are sentenced to 55 years in prison for the murders of Jorge and Miguel. Twin wrestlers also known as Hombre Salvaje and Cobra Voladora.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't get with a prostitute. It's illegal, and you could go to jail. That's if you're lucky, because as we just saw, you could get drugged and robbed, or even poisoned and die like a scumbag in a sleazy hotel room that smells bad and has bed bugs.
Miss Cece, fortune teller extraordinaire.
Spirits, come to me, please.
She's progressed from working in the local laundromat
The lover's card.
to being the most sought-after mystic in town.
Last reveal. It's the death card.
But when Miss Cece and her daughter become the victims of a vicious attack in their own home, detectives must decipher a bizarre clue that weaves superstition and brutality in equal parts. Miss Cece, the best fortune teller in town, attracts clients from all over the country Her services, palm readings and casting spells, don't come cheap. She charges up to $12,000 cash, which she stashes around her home. She flaunts her wealth, driving expensive cars and shopping for extravagant jewelry. And while some people in the community resent Miss Cece, in times of need, they rely on her to rewrite their fates and change the course of their lives.
The people in the community have placed great trust in Miss Cece. They may not like her, but they need her. And if there's one thing I've learned in my 25 years with the FBI, it's this. The pedestal that she has been put on doesn't come without peril. No pedestal does. To whom much has been given, much is expected.
The cost of flaunting her wealth finally catches up with Miss Cece and hits her where it hurts. The robbers make off with $75,000 in cash, but they don't like tea.
Dealing in cash and defrauding the government works just fine and dandy until it doesn't. Everyone and their uncle knows Miss Cece hoards her money in her home, so it doesn't take two geniuses to know they could get away with a big boatload of cash.
The thieves are eventually caught, but without enough evidence to prosecute, they're released. Miss Cece has the locks changed and installs a security system in her home.
There's so much to tell you, Miss Cece.
She now only sees clients that she knows. One of those clients is Tracy. And she's in a pickle.
Close your eyes and hold my hands. Let's gather our energy so all the spirits will come to us.
The mother of 3 children and the owner of a fashion boutique, Tracy is a busy entrepreneur with a flourishing side business. Her husband's brother, Lay. Tracy has been having an illicit affair with Lay for over 2 years, even though he lives thousands of miles away in Richmond, Virginia.
It always strikes me as odd when people look within their own family to cheat. And I don't know, maybe it makes it easier. Certainly it's gonna make the family gatherings a little more interesting.
Now, what is it that you want me to help you with today?
Well, you know Lay, the guy I've been seeing?
Yes.
I'm getting mixed signals from him.
Tracy trusts Miss Cece implicitly and doesn't make a move without consulting her.
He doesn't want to see me anymore. I think he's falling out of love with me.
So when her brother-in-law breaks off the affair, Miss Cece is the first person she sees.
I was wondering if you could put a love spell on him.
If I do cast a spell, it's very expensive.
Spells and hocus pocus may sound pretty out there, but people who are superstitious can have unwavering faith in fortune tellers.
Will this suffice?
Thank you.
One of the things you quickly learn as an investigator is to look at a person's actions in the context of their beliefs.
Please join Tracy and Lay together for eternal love.
And when you do that, seemingly random actions suddenly have a lot of meaning.
It's the death card. You know what that means? There's something in your life that you have to end right now.
Well, I have been thinking of divorcing my husband.
That's it. That's it. That's what the death represents, that you must divorce your husband.
So it's settled. It's all in the cards.
It is.
Impulsive behavior like that can be a real good indicator that a person's decision-making ability is, what's the word, skewed.
Happy and relieved, Tracy packs up her belongings and her kids and says, "See you later" to her husband. With another satisfied client under her belt, Miss Cece pockets the $5,000 fee and gets back to doing what she does best, shopping.
It looks like Miss Cece didn't learn her lesson about flaunting her money. Remember that time she was robbed at gunpoint? It's almost like she's daring someone to come and steal from her again.
Honey, you don't have to worry about the budget.
Miss Cece's daughter,
But
Alice,
you promised me to have doves for the wedding.
and her fiancé, Chen, have been fighting over the plans for their wedding.
No doves, no wedding.
She wants the big princess wedding, and he wants something small and tasteful.
Jen and I are fighting again.
About what?
She retreats to her mother's house for some tender, loving care.
Do you want your favorite cup of tea?
Please.
Chamomile? Okay, I'm gonna do it right now for you.
In an attempt to win her back, Chen bakes Alice vanilla cupcakes with sparkles, her favorite, and attaches a love note. The next day, when Chen still hasn't heard from Alice, he arrives on her mother's doorstep. When he finds his thoughtful treat untouched, he gets worried and calls the police. When the police enter the house, they find Miss Cece and her daughter Alice lying in a pool of blood, and they've been brutally and fatally stabbed.
This is Detective Lee. Request for backup. Apparent double homicide.
Women killed in their own home are tragically not all that rare, but throw in a dead mystic and a superstitious culture, and you got yourself a uniquely bizarre mystery.
When detectives examine the crime scene, they discover Miss Cece kneeling in the kitchen. Her body configured into a subservient bow. Her hands and fingers have been manipulated into obscene gestures. Alice has puncture wounds on her body, head, and hands. They've both been stabbed multiple times.
When a killer manipulates the body and poses the victim, you can always read something about the killer from it. In this case, because the victim is bowing and giving the big F-U with her finger, means likely that the killer is mocking the victim. It's a humiliating position, so you can assume that the murderer isn't a BFF.
Next to Miss Cece, detectives find a bloody knife and another on the floor closer to Alice.
A stabbing is a very upfront and personal way of killing. You're in their faces, you're literally causing them pain while watching the life drain out of their eyes. A gun is easier, a gun is tidier, but a knife means I want you to suffer, I want to see your fear, and I want to watch.
When detectives take a closer look at the victims, they get a frightening shock.
In 25 years, I can honestly say I have never seen a victim whose face has been painted white. There's a number of things that painting the face white could symbolize. It could be a ritualistic cult thing, it could be a cultural symbol of some kind, or simply have been done to hide evidence and compromise the crime scene.
When investigators search the house, they discover it's been ransacked from top to bottom. Miss Cece's credit cards, cell phone, and jewelry are missing, suggesting robbery as a motive.
So this is obviously a robbery, but that's not all it is. I mean, you've got to account for the way the victims were murdered and the fact that these killers took time to paint their victims' faces and hands, as well as position them. It can be difficult to unlock the meaning behind this type of symbolism because it can be so personal to the killer. The challenge for an investigator is not to get too focused on any one unusual detail that they don't follow up on other leads. And the fact that there was a robbery on top of all this intricate posing, that's a lead in and of itself.
Police also find a small bloody footprint on a tea towel on the floor.
For all you detectives in training out there, listen up. Here's what's good and bad about a footprint. Good point is, if you catch the killer, then you can match the print to the foot. But here's the bad part. We don't keep records of footprints. So you have to catch the killer first. And the footprint won't lead you to him.
Just tell me about this fight that you and Alice had.
It's, it was stupid.
Detectives immediately set their sights on Chen, the boyfriend.
Every time we fight, we find a way to make up.
Where were you on the day that she got murdered?
I was working that day. You can ask my boss. We had this project.
When they check his alibi, it's airtight. But he does drop a tiny nugget of hope in the detective's lap.
There was a handyman. He had access to the house. Look into the handyman.
Detectives find the handyman clearing out his tools in Miss Cece's garage and immediately bring him in.
Why don't you show me your hands?
My hands?
Yeah, hold them up, please.
So this guy goes to the top of the suspect list. White paint at the crime scene, white paint on that guy's hands. Check.
What did you have against Miss Cece?
Miss Cece, nothing.
They're sure they have their man, but when they test the paint from the handyman, it doesn't match the paint used in the crime.
I work almost every week for her. She's a lovely lady.
And when his alibi checks out, he's released. As they exhaust all leads, detectives turn to Miss Cece's own community for help. A neighbor reports seeing a man and a woman visiting the house on the day of the murder and gives a detailed description of the pair.
It's no secret Miss Cece angered a lot of people with her flashy ways, but as distasteful as they found her nouveau riche attitude, they needed her. Her followers truly believe she can help direct their lives in a positive way. So why would somebody bite the hand that feeds them?
Investigators get no tips after releasing the drawings of the mysterious man and woman to the public. And with no suspects on the horizon, the case goes cold. Until a surprising discovery heats things up again. Investigators discover phone calls being made from the victim's phone.
So either Miss Cece has come back from the dead and is making calls, which in my experience is rare, or the killer has just made their first mistake.
Detectives discover that not only do phone calls appear on Miss Cece's cell phone, but purchases are being made on her credit card. Clothes, electronics, and meals at expensive restaurants, totaling a whopping $63,000. The detective checks store surveillance cameras and hit pay dirt when they see a woman with a strong resemblance to the sketch of the supposed killer ringing up a large bill.
Okay, let's stop here for a minute just to enjoy this. Just moments before, investigators had no clue who the murderer was. The killer was likely going to get away with it. And then this woman decides not only to use the dead woman's phone, but hey, while we're at it, let's charge thousands of dollars to her credit card.
Police discover that Miss Cece's credit card was also used to purchase 4 plane tickets. But this time, our mystery woman isn't so careful. Turns out she's none other than Miss Cece's best client, Tracy. Tracy is put under surveillance, and following yet another shopping spree courtesy of Miss Cece's stolen credit cards, police confront her. They find $4,000 in cash, as well as ID and credit cards belonging to Miss Cece. When questioned, Tracy can't get her story straight. They arrest her and bring her down to the station. While Tracy is in custody, police search her apartment in Virginia and find missing items from Miss Cece's house, along with a bizarre calendar entry. Brutal act written on the day of the murder.
It's like she left little breadcrumbs for the police so they could follow her into the woods. Just in case you had any doubt it was me, here's another little crumb for you, and another, and whoops, here's another.
The big break in the case comes when they find a boarding pass for a flight leaving Chicago. The boarding pass is dated 1 day after the murder, but the name on the pass isn't Tracy's. It's a name detectives haven't heard before, Roger Wang. Detectives learn Roger is a married father of 5 who lives in the same town as Tracy. Roger's wife worked at Tracy's boutique, and the 2 families became friends.
So why are you in the area?
I was not in the area. I was not even there.
Roger is brought in for questioning.
Well, we have people saying that they saw you and Tracy walking around the area.
Oh, well, yeah, I went, Tracy told me about she's a great fortune teller.
Where he tries to explain what he was doing in Chicago at the time of the murder.
Your DNA is scattered around Miss Cece's shop.
Well, I was...
Worn down by police, he finally starts talking and confesses to the murders.
We're there to rob her, and when we got there, Tracy, she went crazy.
But names Tracy as the mastermind.
What did Tracy have over this guy that he would give up his whole life to help her? I mean, think about it. He doesn't even know Miss Cece, but he agrees to fly across the country with Tracy to murder her in cold blood. I mean, she must have had an immense amount of control over him. The question is, why?
DNA from the knives links Roger to the crime, but there's little forensic evidence against Tracy.
So why'd you kill her?
Detectives confront her with Roger's allegations.
I didn't kill her.
Tracy claims she was never at Miss Cece's house and that Roger did the deed all by himself.
Okay, this is a tough spot to be in if you're an investigator. You really want her to confess because you don't have any physical evidence against her yet. And the DA is going to want things like that from you to ensure a conviction.
Where's your proof?
But the problem is this killer is so smug, they're never gonna give you one.
Well, we do have a neighbor that's given us a pretty detailed description of 2 people entering her place.
Detectives try and break her by telling her Miss Cece's neighbor saw Roger and Tracy enter the house that day. And this time, they take her prints, hands, and feet. Tracy's footprint matches the footprint left on the bloody tea towel found at the crime scene. And she's charged with first-degree murder.
Shoes off.
If I were a criminal, my first rule would be, don't wear high heels to a murder. The second rule would be, don't take them off. But hey, I'm no criminal, and I prefer wedges to heels.
You gotta give me a deal here, because I can tell you everything.
Roger agrees to testify against Tracy in exchange for a lighter sentence. He tells detectives that he and Tracy flew across the country from Richmond to Chicago. They went to Miss Cece's house under the pretense of having their fortunes told.
How are ya?
Cece, I'm all over the place. I just need your help again.
Yeah, just relax.
They were surprised that Alice was there.
Okay, I'll make a cup of tea for you and we'll sit down, we'll talk about it, all right? Okay, make yourself at home.
Suddenly, Tracy spirals into a blind rage. She starts stabbing Miss Cece and instructs Roger to kill Alice. In the heat of the moment, Roger does what she tells him. He stabs Alice repeatedly. Once mother and daughter are dead, Tracy and Roger drive to a department store and buy a gallon of white paint. They return to the scene of the crime and paint the hands and faces of the victims white. Then they ransack the house looking for cash. When they don't find any, they steal Miss Cece's phone and credit cards.
This was such a vicious murder, from the way they were stabbed to the horrible way the bodies were configured. And you gotta ask yourself, was this really just about money? Or was there something else motivating the madness?
A year before the brutal murder of Miss Cece and her daughter Alice, Tracy moved across the country on Miss Cece's recommendation that both her love life and business would flourish. Tracy made the move, opened a new fashion boutique, and began the daunting task of wooing her lover.
No,
What do you mean?
I can't.
But Leigh had moved on and didn't take the bait.
Sure?
You're crazy.
Interesting way to try to convince somebody to get back together with you. Threaten them with a hammer. Good idea. But Tracy's obviously suffering some kind of anger management issue, to put it mildly. She's so focused on getting what she wants that she can't see that her actions are irrational and only causing her more problems.
Her new business is hemorrhaging money, and she can't make her car payments. At a loss, Tracy calls the one person she counts on to fix the situation.
Hi, Miss Cece. It's Tracy.
What Miss Cece says next probably foretold her own fortune.
Sorry, Tracy, but Leigh doesn't love you. You have to move on.
Tracy is conditioned to believe that what she wants, she gonna get. And if she doesn't get it, then somebody has to pay.
She told me to pack up. She told me to leave my husband. Look what happens. My life is ruined.
She tells Roger that she's been cheated.
Love spell is supposed to work.
Miss Cece promised her a life of success.
We need to get my money back.
Instead, she finds herself alone and broke.
Come on, she can't get away with this. You're on my side, aren't you?
Because of this, Miss Cece deserves to die.
And then why did you kill Alice?
When detectives ask why Roger killed Alice, Miss Cece's daughter, Roger simply replies, collateral damage.
In my opinion, this woman is a sociopath, someone with zero empathy. When somebody gets in her way, she simply discards them. End of story.
And why did Roger agree to help? A man who's married with 5 children and has everything to lose.
Hey, listen, I have a friend, Marcia. Remember her? I can set you up with her.
Because he was extremely unhappy in his relationship and Tracy promised to help him find potential lovers.
You like that, right? Yeah, come on, help me.
The two most insane motives ever to snuff out somebody's life. But here's the thing about senseless murders. Really, there are none. You ever heard that term, there's method to the madness? Yeah, because even though something seems senseless to you and me, to her, it makes perfect sense.
For his part in the crime, Roger is sentenced to 25 years. Tracy, the mastermind, receives a sentence of life without parole.
Tracy so believed in the power of this woman that when her life didn't turn out the way her fortune teller had promised, she felt it was well within her rights to kill her.
Even with Tracy behind bars, one mystery remains. Why did she choose to paint the face and hands of her victims white?
One theory that makes sense to me is that by having their faces covered, Tracy ensured that the two would never be reincarnated, a very important goal in their culture. Miss Cece and Alice's souls would fail to unite with their bodies in the afterworld because their faces would be unrecognizable because of the white paint. She didn't just kill them once, she essentially killed them forever.